Princess Zara walked through the crystal halls of the royal palace on Veltar. Her blue skin gleamed under the soft lights, and her silver hair moved like liquid metal with each step. She had just finished her morning lessons about star maps and trade routes. At 23 years old, she was ready to help rule the great Cathani Empire. The palace doors opened before her, sensing her approach. Everything on Veltar worked this way, smooth, perfect, and planned. The Cathani had built their civilization over thousands of years. They never rushed. They never made mistakes. They were better than all other species in the galaxy, or so Zara had always been taught. "Princess Zara," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Nex, her father's personal guard. His face looked worried. "Emperor Voss wants to see you right away. It's important." Zara felt a small flutter of fear in her chest. Her father never called for urgent meetings unless something was very wrong. She followed Captain Nex through the winding passages to the throne room. The great chamber was empty except for her father, who sat on the throne of black stone that had been in their family for centuries. Emperor Voss looked old today. His usual calm expression was gone, replaced by something Zara had never seen before: guilt. His golden eyes met hers as she approached. "Sit, my daughter," he said, pointing to the chair next to his throne. "We need to talk about your future." Zara sat down, her hands folded in her lap. "What is it, father? You look troubled." The emperor stood up and walked to the great window that showed the city below. Millions of Cathani went about their daily lives, not knowing that their princess was about to learn something that would change everything. 23 years ago, Emperor Voss began, humanity was dying. A terrible plague had spread across their worlds. Billions were sick. Their doctors could not help them. Their technology was too simple. They came to us, begging for help. Zara frowned. She knew about humans, of course. They were a young species that had only reached the stars a few hundred years ago. They were known for being emotional and violent. Most Cathani thought they were barely better than animals. "We helped them," her father continued. "Our doctors created a cure. We saved their entire species from death, but helping them cost us much: time, resources, and the risk of catching their plague ourselves." "That was good of us," Zara said, though she wondered why her father seemed so upset about saving lives. Emperor Voss turned to face her. "We asked for something in return." The human leader at that time was Admiral Pete Watson. He had a baby son named Jake Miller. I had a baby daughter, you. We made an agreement, sealed with the old laws that cannot be broken. Zara's heart began to beat faster. She did not like where this was going. "The agreement was this," her father said slowly. "When both children came of age, they would marry. This marriage would unite our peoples and make sure humans never forgot what they owed us." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She stood up so fast that her chair fell over. "No," she whispered. "No, you cannot mean this. I am sorry, my daughter. The contract cannot be broken. In 1 month you will meet Jake Miller. If all goes well, you will marry him before the year ends." Zara felt sick. Marry a human? The idea was horrible beyond words. Humans lived such short lives, maybe 80 years if they were lucky. They were primitive, violent, and ruled by emotions instead of logic. How could her father ask her to throw away her life like this? "Father, please," she said, her voice shaking. "I am your heir. I was born to rule the Cathani Empire. How can I do that married to a human? What will our people think?" "They will think we honor our promises," Emperor Voss replied firmly. "The contract is signed and witnessed. The human, Jake Miller, is now a captain in their defense forces. He has agreed to meet you." "He agreed?" Zara felt a spark of anger. How dare he think he is good enough to marry a Cathani princess? "Careful, daughter. Your anger shows your youth. Jake Miller had as little choice in this as you do. His people needed our help, and this was the price." Zara paced back and forth, her mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. What if I refuse? What if I simply say no? Her father's expression hardened. then you are no daughter of mine. You will lose your title, your home, and your people. The humans also have the right to declare war on us if we break the contract. Do you want to be responsible for another war? The threat of war made Zara stop pacing. The Cathani were powerful, but they had enemies. The Void Swarm grew stronger each year. They could not afford to make enemies of the humans too, even if humans seemed weak. Tell me about him, she said finally. This Jake Miller. Emperor Voss walked to his desk and picked up a datapad. He is 24 years old. He commands a human warship called Aurora's Edge. He has fought in several battles against the Zelth Collective and won. His people respect him. A warrior, Zara said with disgust. Of course he is. Do not judge him before you meet him. Remember, you represent all Cathani. Your behavior will show him what kind of people we are. Zara felt trapped. Everything she had planned for her life was falling apart. She had studied languages, science, and diplomacy. She was ready to help her people reach new heights of civilization. Instead, she was being traded away like property. Where will we meet? She asked. Haven's Rest Space Station. It is neutral ground. Both our ships and theirs will be there. The meeting is already arranged. Zara closed her eyes. In 1 month, she would meet the human she was supposed to marry. She tried to imagine what he would be like. Probably big and loud, like most human males. He would probably try to impress her with stories of his battles. He would not understand Cathani culture or care about their long history. I will do my duty, she said at last. But do not expect me to be happy about it. Emperor Voss nodded sadly. I know this is hard, my daughter, but sometimes rulers must sacrifice their personal desires for the good of their people. This marriage could bring great benefits to both our species. Zara left the throne room feeling like her world had ended. As she walked back to her chambers, she passed servants and nobles who bowed respectfully. They had no idea that their princess was about to be given away to a species they considered barely civilized. That night, Zara stood on her balcony looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a human named Jake Miller was probably looking at the same stars. In 1 month, she would meet him. In less than a year, she might be his wife. The thought made her feel sick all over again. Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of Aurora's Edge, watching Haven's Rest Space Station grow larger on the main screen. The station was huge, built from white metal that gleamed against the black of space. Ships from dozens of different species docked at its many ports. Today, it would host one of the most important meetings in human history. Jake adjusted his dress uniform and tried to calm his nerves. In a few hours, he would meet Princess Zara of the Cathani Empire. The woman he was supposed to marry. The thought still seemed impossible. Sir, said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station, the Cathani ship just arrived. It's impressive. Jake looked at the screen. The Cathani vessel was 3 times the size of Aurora's Edge, shaped like a crystal spear. It moved through space without any visible engines, as if the laws of physics bent around it. Everything about it screamed advanced technology and old power. Any word from them? Jake asked. Just standard docking requests. They're being very formal. Jake nodded. He had spent the last month studying everything he could about Cathani culture. Their language was musical and complex. Their society was built on honor, duty, and tradition. They valued wisdom over strength and thought in terms of centuries, rather than years. They also thought humans were barely evolved animals. Captain, said his second officer, Commander Lisa Park, are you ready for this? Jake almost laughed. Is anyone ever ready to meet their arranged bride, especially one from another species? The past month had been the strangest of Jake's life. He had gone from being a simple starship captain to the center of an interspecies marriage contract. The media had gone crazy. Some people called him a hero for taking on this duty. Others said he was a fool for giving up his freedom. Jake did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man walking toward his own execution. Remember, Commander Park said quietly, this isn't just about you. Earth needs this alliance. The Cathani saved our species once. Now they're offering to help us again. I know, Jake replied. That doesn't make it easier. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the main conference room of Haven's Rest. The room was designed to accommodate different species with adjustable gravity and atmosphere. On one side sat the human delegation, diplomats, scientists, and military officers. On the other side, empty chairs waited for the Cathani. Jake had tried to imagine what Princess Zara would look like. He had seen pictures, of course, but they were formal portraits that showed little personality. He knew she had blue skin, silver hair, and golden eyes. He knew she was considered beautiful by Cathani standards, but what would she be like as a person? The doors opened with a soft whisper. The Cathani delegation entered, moving with grace that made them seem like they were dancing rather than walking. Their leader was a tall male with intricate tattoos covering his arms. Behind him came several others, all wearing robes of deep purple, and then she entered. Princess Zara was smaller than Jake had expected, maybe 5.5 feet tall. Her blue skin had a subtle shimmer, like light on water. Her silver hair was braided with tiny crystals that caught the light. But it was her eyes that struck him most, golden and intelligent, studying everything around her with sharp focus. She looked at Jake for just a moment, and he felt like she could see right through him. The formal introductions began. The Cathani ambassador spoke first, welcoming everyone and praising the wisdom of both species for arranging this meeting. Then the human ambassador replied with similar polite words. Finally, it was time for Jake and Zara to be introduced. Princess Zara, the ambassador said, may I present Captain Jake Miller of the Earth Defense Force. Jake stepped forward and bowed in the Cathani style, hands pressed together and head lowered. Your Highness, he said in careful Cathani, I am honored to meet you. Zara's golden eyes widened slightly. She had not expected him to speak her language. She replied in perfect English, Captain Miller, I hope your journey was comfortable. Her voice was cool and formal, but Jake caught something else underneath, curiosity, maybe even surprise. The first day of meetings was all ceremony and formal discussions. Treaties were reviewed. Trade agreements were discussed. Both sides were very polite and very careful not to say anything that might cause offense. But Jake noticed that Zara watched him throughout the day. When he spoke about human military tactics, she seemed genuinely interested. When he mentioned Earth's struggles with resource management, she took notes on a device that looked like liquid metal. That evening, there was a formal dinner. Jake and Zara sat next to each other at the high table, surrounded by diplomats and nobles from both species. The food was carefully chosen to be edible by everyone present, though it was bland and safe. Your Cathani is quite good, Zara said as they ate. Where did you learn it? I've been studying for the past month, Jake replied. I thought it was important to make an effort. 1 month? Zara looked surprised. Most humans take years to learn even basic Cathani. Most humans don't have my motivation, Jake said with a small smile. Zara did not smile back. Instead, she said, Tell me, Captain Miller, what do you know about Cathani military strategy? Jake had been expecting this question. I know that you prefer defensive positions and long-term planning. You use superior technology to avoid direct conflict when possible. Your tactics focus on minimizing losses rather than achieving quick victories. And what do you think of these tactics? Zara asked. Jake chose his words carefully. They work well when you have technological superiority and time to plan, but they might not work as well against enemies who can match your technology or force you into quick decisions. Zara's eyes flashed. Are you saying our military is weak, Captain? The conversation around the table quieted. Everyone was listening now. Not weak, Jake said, but maybe not as adaptable as they could be. I've read about your recent battles with the Void Swarm. Your losses have been increasing because they've learned to counter your standard tactics, and I suppose human tactics would work better. Zara's voice was cold now. Maybe, Jake said. We're good at thinking fast and changing plans when things go wrong. We're also good at taking risks when we have to. Risks, Zara repeated. Yes, humans are famous for their risks. like rushing into battles without proper planning, like starting wars over emotions instead of logic. Jake felt his temper rise. At least we win our wars. The silence that followed was complete. Zara stared at Jake with something like shock. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. "Excuse me," she said, standing up. "I find I am not hungry anymore." She left the dining room with her head held high, followed by several Cathani nobles. The human delegation looked horrified. "Well," Commander Park said quietly. "That went well." Jake spent the rest of the evening in his quarters, wondering if he had just destroyed any chance of alliance between their species. He had not meant to insult her, but something about her attitude had made him angry. She acted like humans were children playing at being soldiers. At 3 in the morning, the station's alarms went off. "All hands to battle stations," came the announcement. "We are under attack by unknown vessels." Jake grabbed his uniform and ran for the docking bay where Aurora's Edge was moored. Around him, beings from a dozen species were doing the same thing, rushing to their ships or to defensive positions. As he reached his ship, Jake saw the Cathani vessel launching fighters. The elegant crystal ships moved like dancers through space, their weapons firing beams of pure light at dark shapes that seemed to absorb the light around them. "Void Swarm Scouts," Commander Park reported as Jake reached the bridge. 12 ships moving fast. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Void Swarm ships were heading straight for the station's main reactor. If they reached it, thousands would die. "Take us out," Jake ordered. "Full weapons." Aurora's Edge launched from the dock just as the first Void Swarm ship reached the station's outer defenses. Jake could see the battle unfolding on his screens. Cathani fighters dancing around the dark enemy ships, human vessels charging straight at them, and station defenses firing everything they had. But it was not enough. 2 Void Swarm ships broke through and headed for the reactor. "Captain," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Princess Zara. I'm tracking the 2 breakthrough ships. Can you intercept the one heading for Section 7? Jake was surprised to hear from her, but he did not hesitate. "Already on it, Your Highness. Can you handle the other one?" "Consider it done." Jake watched as Zara's fighter, a beautiful crystal ship that moved like liquid, curved around the station toward the second breakthrough ship. At the same time, Aurora's Edge accelerated toward its target. The Void Swarm ship was fast, but Jake was faster. He caught it just before it reached the reactor and opened fire with everything he had. The dark ship exploded in a burst of shadow that seemed to eat the light around it. On his screen, Jake saw Zara's fighter perform an impossible spiral maneuver that brought her behind her target. Her weapons fired once, a lance of pure energy that cut the Void Swarm ship in half. "Nice shot," Jake said over the comm. "Nice intercept," Zara replied. Within minutes, the remaining Void Swarm ships were destroyed or driven off. The station was safe, though several ships had been damaged and some people were hurt. Later that night, Jake found Zara in the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. She had changed. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake and Zara spent more time together. What started as formal meetings became long conversations about their peoples, their worlds, and their dreams. Jake found himself looking forward to these talks more than he expected. They met in the station's cultural center, a quiet place with gardens from different worlds. Zara often brought a device that could show holographic images, while Jake carried data pads filled with human history and stories. "I want to show you something," Jake said one morning. He activated his pad and the air above it filled with images of Earth. "This is my home world." Zara watched as scenes of Earth flowed past. Green forests, blue oceans, snow-covered mountains, and cities full of people. She had expected human cities to be ugly and crowded, but many were beautiful in their own way. "Your people build differently than we do," she said. "Everything looks so busy." Jake laughed. "That's one way to put it. We don't plan things out as carefully as Cathani do. We build what we need when we need it, then change it later if it doesn't work." "That seems wasteful," Zara said, but her voice was curious rather than critical. "Maybe," Jake agreed, "but it also means we can change quickly when we have to." Look at this. The hologram showed a human city before and after a flood. In the first image, the city sat peacefully beside a river. In the second, taken just 5 years later, the entire city had been rebuilt on higher ground with new flood barriers. The river changed course during a storm, Jake explained. Instead of trying to change the river back, we moved the whole city. It took 3 years, but we did it. Zara studied the images carefully. A Cathani city would have been built with barriers strong enough to handle any possible flood. We would have studied the river for decades before building anything. And that would have worked perfectly, Jake said, until something happened that you didn't plan for. Such as? Jake changed. The hologram. Now it showed scenes from human history. Wars, disasters, and the struggles to rebuild afterward. Humans are good at surviving things we didn't expect. We've had to be. Our world is dangerous. Our history is full of surprises, and we learned early that the best plans don't always work. Zara watched images of humans working together after earthquakes, floods, and wars. She saw them sharing food when they barely had enough, building shelters for strangers and fighting to protect people they had never met. Your people seem very emotional, she said finally. Is that bad? Jake asked. Zara was quiet for a moment. Cathani children are taught to control their emotions from a very young age. We believe logic and careful thinking lead to better decisions. And you're probably right most of the time, Jake said. But sometimes emotions help us do things that logic says are impossible. He showed her a recording of a human mother lifting a fallen tree off her trapped child, something that should have been beyond her physical strength. Another showed a group of human soldiers holding off an entire army to protect a city full of refugees. We call it the human spirit, Jake said. When everything looks hopeless, when logic says we should give up, something inside us says to keep fighting anyway. And this is why humans survive when other species might not, Zara said thoughtfully. Maybe. I don't know if we're better or worse than anyone else, we're just different. Zara was learning that Jake was different from what she had expected too. He was smart, not just clever, but truly intelligent. He asked questions that made her think about things in new ways. He listened carefully to her answers and remembered everything she told him. When it was her turn, Zara showed Jake the wonders of Cathani civilization. She displayed their great libraries where the knowledge of thousands of years was stored. She showed him their cities, built to last forever, where every building was perfectly placed for maximum beauty and efficiency. This is the Grand Archive on Veltar, she said, showing a hologram of a crystal spire that reached up into the clouds. It contains every piece of knowledge our people have ever discovered. Scientists come from across the galaxy to study there. Jake was impressed. How long did it take to build? 300 years for the main structure. We're still adding to it. 300 years, Jake repeated. Humans have trouble planning 3 years ahead. But look what we achieved with patience, Zara said proudly. This archive has helped solve problems for dozens of species. Diseases cured, technologies improved, conflicts resolved through knowledge, rather than war. Jake studied the image carefully. It's beautiful, he said, and incredibly valuable. But what happens if someone destroys it? Zara looked shocked. Why would anyone destroy knowledge? I don't know. Maybe they're afraid of what others might learn. Maybe they want to control information, maybe they're just destructive. But what if it happened? We have backups, of course, multiple copies stored in different locations. That's good planning, Jake said. But I mean something bigger. What if your entire way of thinking was challenged? What if you had to completely change how you do things? Zara frowned. We don't change easily. Change is dangerous. It leads to mistakes. But what if not changing was even more dangerous? The question bothered Zara more than she wanted to admit. Over the past few days, she had started to see weaknesses in Cathani thinking. Their careful planning worked well in stable times, but the galaxy was not as stable as it used to be. The Void Swarm was growing stronger. New threats appeared regularly. Maybe the ability to change quickly was not such a bad thing. Tell me about your military service, she said, changing the subject. Jake's expression grew serious. I joined the Defense Force when I was 18. My first assignment was on a patrol ship along the border with Zelth Space. The Zelth Collective, Zara said. They have been enemies of both our peoples. My ship was the first to detect their invasion fleet, Jake continued. 40 ships heading for a human colony called New Brisbane. We had maybe 6 hours before they arrived. Jake showed her recordings from that battle. The human colony was small, just farming settlements and a few small cities. The Defense Force had only 12 ships in the area, facing 40 Zelth warships. What did you do? Zara asked. What we always do, Jake said. We fought anyway. The battle recordings showed something Zara had never seen before. The human ships were outgunned and outnumbered, but they did not retreat. Instead, they used tactics. That seemed crazy. Ramming attacks, self-destruct runs, and coordinated strikes that required perfect timing. We lost 8 ships, Jake said quietly. But we stopped them. The colony survived. How? Zara asked. The mathematics don't work out. You should have lost. Because the Zelth expected us to fight logically, Jake explained. They planned for us to retreat when we realized we couldn't win. When we kept attacking anyway, their formations broke down. They got confused and started making mistakes. Zara watched the recordings again, trying to understand. But your losses were terrible. Surely there was a better way. Maybe, Jake said. But we didn't have time to find it. Sometimes you have to choose between a bad option and a worse one. And you chose to sacrifice your ships to save the colony. We chose to do our job, Jake corrected. Protecting people is what we signed up for. Zara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I think I understand now why your people survived. The plague years. You don't give up even when you should. Is that good or bad? Jake asked. I'm starting to think it might be good, Zara admitted. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Sam Miller, Jake's younger brother. Sam had come to Haven's Rest with news from Earth, and Jake had asked him to meet Zara. So you're the princess my brother is supposed to marry, Sam said with a grin. I've got to say, you're prettier than the pictures. Zara looked confused. Pictures? Jake sighed. Sam, please try to be polite. I am being polite, Sam protested. I could have mentioned how the whole human internet is going crazy trying to figure out what alien babies would look like. Sam! But Zara was laughing, a sound like musical chimes. Your brother is very direct, she told Jake. I like that. Over. Dinner. Sam told stories about growing up with Jake. He described their childhood on Mars Colony, where Jake had always been the responsible older brother. He used to make me do my homework before we could play, Sam said. Even when our parents weren't around, said education was too important to skip. Education is important, Zara agreed. That's what Jake always said. He wanted to be a teacher before he joined the military. Zara looked surprised. A teacher? Jake looked embarrassed. It was just a childhood dream. He was going to teach history, Sam continued. Said that understanding the past was the key to building a better future. After Sam left for his ship, Zara and Jake walked through the station's gardens. The plants came from dozens of worlds, creating a peaceful mix of colors and scents. You wanted to be a teacher, Zara said. It was not a question. A long time ago, Jake replied. Before the war started. What changed your mind? Jake was quiet for a moment. I realize that sometimes you have to fight to protect the things you want to teach. Peace doesn't protect itself. But you still think like a teacher, Zara observed. The way you explained human history to me, the way you listened to my questions. You're still teaching, just in a different way. Maybe, Jake said. What about you? What did you want to be before you knew you would rule? I wanted to explore. The journey to Earth took 2 days instead of 3. Zara's ship, Crystal Dawn, could move faster than any human vessel. Jake stood on her bridge, watching the stars blur past as they traveled through hyperspace. The Cathani technology was amazing, but all Jake could think about was what they would find when they reached home. Your ship is incredible, Jake told Zara as they watched the navigation display. How fast can it go? Fast enough, Zara replied. She was dressed in Cathani battle armor now, silver and blue metal that seemed to flow like liquid around her body. But speed won't matter if we're too late. Behind them came 5 more Cathani ships, sleek and deadly. Zara had convinced their captains to follow her, though Jake was not sure how. He suspected there would be trouble with the Cathani government later, but Zara did not seem worried about that. Tell me about Earth's defenses, Zara said, studying tactical displays. What do you have left? Jake pulled up the latest reports on his datapad. The news was bad. The outer defense grid is gone. 3 major fleet bases have been destroyed. The Void Swarm has landed on Luna, our moon, and they're using it as a staging area for attacks on Earth itself. How many ships do they have? Our last count was over 200, maybe more by now. Zara was quiet for a moment. How many ships does Earth have left? Maybe 50 that can still fight, Jake admitted. Not good odds. No, Zara agreed. But not impossible either. The Void Swarm has weaknesses. They rely on their hive mind for coordination. If we can disrupt their communications... We've tried that before, Jake said. They adapt too quickly. Human tactics, human technology, Zara pointed out, but we might have better luck working together. Over the next day, Jake and Zara planned their strategy. They studied Void Swarm battle patterns looking for weaknesses. They reviewed the layout of Earth's solar system, identifying key positions. Most importantly, they learned to work as a team. Jake was impressed by Zara's tactical mind. She could see patterns that he missed and predict enemy moves several steps ahead. But she was also impressed by his ability to think outside normal rules. What if we don't try to beat them in a straight fight? Jake suggested. What if we make them think they're winning, then hit them when they're not expecting it? Explain, Zara said. Jake pulled up a holographic map of Earth's solar system. The Void Swarm expects us to defend Earth directly. That's what any logical species would do. But what if we let them think they're about to win, then attack their command structure when their guard is down? Zara studied the map. Risky. If the timing is wrong, Earth falls. But if it works, we could end this battle in one strike instead of fighting a long war we can't win. Very risky, Zara repeated, but Jake could see her thinking about it. Show me exactly what you have in mind. They worked through the night refining their plan. It required perfect coordination between human and Cathani forces. It also required both of them to trust each other completely. When they finally reached Earth's solar system, the sight that greeted them was worse than Jake had feared. Space around Earth was full of debris from destroyed ships. The moon's surface was covered with dark void swarm structures that seemed to absorb light. And moving, between Earth and Luna were hundreds of enemy ships, black shapes that looked like they were made from living shadow. My God, Jake whispered. The damage is extensive, Zara said, her voice carefully controlled. But look there. Human ships are still fighting. She was right. Jake could see clusters of human vessels darting between the larger void swarm ships, striking fast and then retreating. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they had not given up. That's Admiral Kate Brooks, Jake said, recognizing the formation patterns. She's still alive. And she's using the tactics you described, Zara observed. Hit and run, unpredictable movements. The void swarm is having trouble adapting. But she can't keep this up much longer, Jake said. Her ships are running out of fuel and weapons. Zara activated her ship's communication system. Admiral Brooks, this is Princess Zara of the Cathani Empire. Captain Miller and I have arrived with reinforcements. The reply came back immediately. Jake? Thank God you're here. We're down to 37 ships and running out of options. We have a plan, Jake said. But it's going to require precise timing and a lot of trust. Over the next hour, Jake and Zara explained their strategy to Admiral Brooks and the other human commanders. The plan was complex and dangerous. If even one part went wrong, Earth would be defenseless. You want us to retreat? Admiral Brooks said. Make it look like we're Giving up? Not giving up, Zara corrected, regrouping for a final strike. The Void Swarm will think they've won and move their command ships closer to Earth for the final attack. That's when we hit them. And if they don't take the bait? Asked Captain Roy Davis from the destroyer Nighthawk. Then we fight and die. Like warriors, Jake said simply. But I'd rather try something that might work than wait for certain defeat. The human commanders agreed to try the plan. They did not have many other options. Phase 1 began an hour later. The human fleet, joined by Zara's Cathani ships, engaged the Void Swarm forces near Luna. For 30 minutes, they fought a fierce battle, trading shots and taking damage. Then, on Jake's signal, they began to retreat. Make it look good, Jake told his captains. Damaged ships, emergency broadcasts, the works. The human fleet fell back toward Earth, leaving behind several ships that appeared to be crippled. The Void Swarm took the bait, following them and preparing for what looked like the final battle. Phase 2, Zara announced. All Cathani ships activate stealth mode. Jake watched in amazement as the Cathani vessels disappeared from his sensors. Their advanced technology made them invisible to both human and Void Swarm detection systems. We'll circle around behind their main fleet, Zara explained. When they commit to their attack on Earth, we'll strike their command ships from behind. But the plan nearly fell apart when the Void Swarm did something unexpected. Instead of sending their entire fleet after the retreating humans, they split their forces. Half continued toward Earth, while the other half spread out to patrol the area. They're being careful, Admiral Brooks reported. It's like they suspect a trap. Jake felt his heart sink. If the Void Swarm did not commit all their forces, the plan would not work. Earth's defenses could not handle even half their fleet. We need to make them angry, Jake said suddenly. What? Zara asked. The Void Swarm hive mind is logical, but it can be influenced by strong emotions from its units. If we make them angry enough, they might abandon their careful tactics and attack with everything they have. How do we make them angry? Admiral, Brooks asked. Jake smiled grimly. We give them a target they can't resist. Me. Before anyone could object, Jake launched his fighter from Aurora's edge. The small ship was fast and heavily armed, perfect for a suicide run. Jake, what are you doing? Zara demanded over the communication link. Something stupid and human, Jake replied. Isn't that what I'm good at? Jake flew straight at the Void Swarm command ship, a massive dark structure that pulsed with alien energy. His fighter's weapons were tiny compared to the enemy vessel, but he was not trying to destroy it. He was trying to get its attention. The plan worked. The Void Swarm command ship began firing at Jake's fighter, and soon half their fleet was chasing him through space. Jake dodged between asteroids and space debris, using every trick he had learned in years of combat. But his fighter could not run forever. A Void Swarm weapon finally found its mark, tearing through his ship's hull and destroying his life support system. Jake. Zara's voice came through his failing communication system. Now would be good, Jake managed to say as his oxygen ran out. That was when Zara made a decision that saved both Jake and the battle. Abandoning the original plan, she decloaked her fighter and flew straight into the middle of the Void Swarm fleet. Her ship's weapons blazed as she fought her way toward Jake's crippled fighter. All Cathani ships, follow me, she commanded. Attack. Pattern 7. Maximum power. The space battle that followed was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Cathani ships danced through space like crystal warriors, their weapons cutting through Void Swarm vessels with surgical precision. At the same time, the human fleet regrouped and attacked from the other side. Jake watched through his fighter's failing screens as Zara's ship performed impossible maneuvers to reach him. She flew through weapons fire that should have destroyed her, guided by skills that seemed superhuman. When she finally reached him, Jake was unconscious from lack of oxygen. Zara used her ship's tractor beam to pull his fighter into her cargo bay, then flooded the area with breathable atmosphere. Stay alive, you stubborn human, she whispered as her medical systems worked on Jake. The battle raged for another hour. The combined human and Cathani fleet, working together with perfect coordination, slowly gained the upper hand. The Void Swarm's hive mind could not adapt fast enough to handle two completely different fighting styles at once. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, Jake woke up in the medical bay of Zara's ship. The first thing he saw was her face, looking worried and relieved at the same time. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "We won," Zara said, and for the first time since they had met, she smiled at him without reservation. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His body felt like. 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth, Jake stood in the gardens of Haven's Rest space station, the same place where he and Zara had first talked under the stars. Today, those gardens were decorated with flowers from both Earth and Veltar, and filled with people from dozens of worlds who had come to witness something historic. Jake adjusted his formal uniform and tried to calm his nerves. Today was supposed to be his wedding day, the day he would marry Princess Zara and seal the alliance between humanity and the Cathani Empire, but things had changed since that contract was signed 23 years ago. "You look nervous," said Admiral Brooks, who stood beside Jake as his best officer. "Having second thoughts?" "No," Jake said without hesitation. "No second thoughts at all." And that was true. Over the past month, Jake had learned that Zara was everything he could have hoped for in a partner. She was brilliant, brave, and kind. She challenged him to think differently while respecting his ideas. She had risked her life to save his, and together they had saved Earth itself. But there was still one problem with their marriage. It was not truly their choice. The ceremony was set to begin in an hour. Diplomats from across the galaxy had gathered to witness the union that would bind two species together. The media was calling it the wedding of the century. Everyone expected Jake and Zara to smile, say their vows, and create the alliance their peoples needed. Everyone except Jake and Zara themselves. "Captain Miller," came a familiar musical voice behind him. Jake turned to see Zara approaching, but she was not wearing the elaborate wedding gown that had been prepared for her. Instead, she wore a simple blue dress that matched her skin. "Your Highness," Jake said formally, though they were alone in this part of the garden. "We need to talk," Zara said. Her golden eyes looked serious. "About today, about us, about what we're really doing here." Jake nodded. He had been hoping she would want to have this conversation. "I've been thinking about the same things." They walked to a quiet bench surrounded by earth roses and Cathani crystal flowers. The mix of their two worlds' plants seemed peaceful together, each type beautiful in its own way. "Jake," Zara said, using his first name instead of his title, "I need to tell you something. This marriage, it's not what I want anymore." Jake felt his heart sink for a moment, until she continued. "I don't want to marry you because of a contract my father signed. I don't want to marry you because our people need an alliance. I don't want our union to be about duty and politics." "Then what do you want?" Jake asked quietly. Zara took a deep breath. "I want to marry you because I choose to. Because in the past month I've learned that you're a good man, who would rather risk his own life than see others suffer. Because you've shown me that humans are not primitive at all. You're just different, and that difference makes you special." Jake felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Jake Miller. Not with Captain Miller of the Earth Defense Force, and not with the human I was supposed to marry. With you, the man who wanted to be a teacher who makes terrible jokes when he's nervous and who nearly got himself killed to save my world." Jake laughed, relief and joy filling his voice. "Well, that's good. Because I've fallen in love with you too. Not with Princess Zara of the Cathani Empire, and not with the alien I was supposed to marry. With you, the woman who dreams of exploring new worlds, who laughs like music, and who flew into a battle to save my stubborn life." They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, hands intertwined. "So what do we do?" Jake asked. "All those people are expecting a wedding. We give them one," Zara said with a smile. "But first we make it clear that this is our choice, not just our duty." An hour later, the great hall of Haven's Rest was packed with guests. Representatives from dozens of species sat in elegant chairs, all facing the altar where Jake and Zara were supposed to take their vows. The human delegation sat on one side, the Cathani delegation on the other, Emperor Voss looked proud but nervous. Admiral Watson, representing Earth's government, seemed relieved that the alliance would finally be sealed. Everyone was waiting for the ceremony to begin. But instead of the traditional wedding march, Jake and Zara walked into the hall together, side by side rather than meeting at the altar. They moved to the center of the room and stopped before their assembled guests. "Friends," Zara said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We have gathered today to witness a marriage between our species. But before we continue, Captain Miller and I have something important to say." A murmur went through the crowd. This was not part of the planned ceremony. Jake stepped forward. 23 years ago, our peoples made an agreement. A contract that would bind us together through marriage, sealed by law and witnessed by both our governments. Today, Zara continued, we ask that this contract be dissolved. The murmur became a roar. Several Cathani nobles stood up in shock. The human delegation looked confused and worried. Emperor Voss rose from his seat. "Daughter, what are you doing?" "Something that should have been done long ago, father," Zara replied calmly. "I am asking that you release me from this arranged marriage." "And I am asking the same from my government," Jake added. "Release me from this obligation." Admiral Watson stepped forward. "Captain Miller, do you understand what you're asking? This alliance is crucial to Earth's future." "Yes, sir, I understand," Jake said. "But I also understand something else. No marriage should be built on obligation alone. No alliance should be forced. And no two people should be bound together by their parents' agreements rather than their own choices." The hall erupted in discussion. Some guests seemed shocked, others confused, and a few appeared angry. But Jake and Zara waited calmly for the noise to die down. "However," Zara said when the room became quiet again, "I have another request to make." She turned to Jake, and her smile was radiant. "Captain Jake Miller," she said formally, "I ask you to marry me. Not because we are bound by law, not because our peoples require it, but because I love you and choose you as my partner in life." Jake grinned. "Princess Zara of the Cathani Empire, I accept your proposal, and I ask you to marry me as well, not out of duty, but because I love you and want to spend my life exploring the universe with you." The hall fell completely silent. Then from the back, someone started to clap. It was Sam Miller, Jake's brother, who was grinning from ear to ear. Soon others joined in, and within moments the entire hall was applauding. Emperor Voss sat down slowly, a small smile on his face. "I dissolve the marriage contract," he announced, "and I give my blessing to this new engagement, freely chosen by both parties." Admiral Watson laughed. "I withdraw the Earth government's marriage requirement, and I wish both of you all the happiness in the universe." The wedding that followed was unlike any ceremony anyone had ever seen. Instead of formal vows written by diplomats, Jake and Zara spoke from their hearts. They promised to learn from each other, to support each other's dreams, and to build a future where humans and Cathani could work together as equals. "I promise to show you new worlds," Zara said, "and to see our universe through your eyes." "I promise to stand beside you in whatever adventures we find," Jake replied, "and to love you for exactly who you are." When they kissed, sealing their marriage, the applause was thunderous. Representatives from dozens of species cheered for the union that would change the galaxy, not because it was required, but because it was chosen. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Humans and Cathani danced together to music from both worlds. Stories were shared, friendships were formed, and plans were made for the future. On the final night, Jake and Zara stood once again in the gardens, looking out at the stars. They wore simple clothes now, having left their formal uniforms behind. "No regrets?" Jake asked. "None," Zara replied, "though I suspect we've created quite a bit of work for ourselves." She was right. In the weeks following their wedding, both Earth and Veltar had requested that Jake and Zara serve as ambassadors between their peoples. There would be new treaties to negotiate, cultural exchanges to organize, and exploration missions to plan. "Speaking of work," Jake said, pulling out a datapad, "I received an interesting message today. The Galactic Council wants to sponsor a joint human-Cathani exploration mission. They're looking for someone to command it. Zara's eyes lit up with excitement. Exploration? New worlds, unknown species? The mission would last 5 years, Jake said, and it would require both a human commander and a Cathani scientific advisor. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Zara said, her voice full of hope. Jake smiled. Zara Miller, yes, I know you took my name, which still amazes me. Would you like to explore the galaxy with your husband? Zara threw her arms around him. Yes, 1,000 times yes. 6 months later, the exploration ship Unity's Dream launched from Haven's Rest. It was a marvel of combined human and Cathani technology. Fast enough to cross the galaxy, tough enough to handle any danger, and equipped with the best of both, species science. Jake stood on the bridge as captain, while Zara served as his chief science officer and first mate. Their crew was a mix of humans and Cathani, all working together toward a common goal. Course set for the Andromeda sector, reported Lieutenant Foster from navigation. Estimated travel time,